Hey everyone, welcome to Engineering Ethics, Phil 325, USCA in Spring 2021. In this video, I'm going to go over the syllabus and an overview of the course. All right, first off, let's start with where to find the syllabus. In Blackboard here, if you click on Syllabus and Schedule, there it is. Click on it, it'll open up, and you can click over here and download it. First off, I want to point out some stuff that's up here in the header. So there's some obvious stuff up here. It's engineering ethics, it's philosophy 325. You're at USCA, it's spring 2021. But I want to point out my email is up here. My office phone number is up here. Now, I probably won't be in my office, but if you leave a message on my office phone number, it will come to my Outlook email. So don't hesitate to do that if you have a question you need to ask me. Furthermore, I'm making myself available on Mondays from 11 to noon for office hours. Probably won't actually be in my office, but we can arrange something on Zoom if we need to do that. All right, let's get into the particulars of the course. This course is designed to be an introduction to the main problems, concepts, theory, and practice of engineering ethics. It will allow students to explore the relationship between ethics and engineering and apply classical moral theory and decision-making to engineering issues encountered in academic and professional careers. Further, this course shall also examine the ethical aspects of engineering as they relate to society as a whole. For human societies tend to posit expectations of responsibility and accountability on their professionals, and this includes engineers and extends even to the results of engineering as well. Expected learning outcomes. 1. Recall and identify the major thinkers, schools, core philosophical questions, terms, and concepts found in the study of ethics and metaethics. Further, recognize basic aspects in the philosophy of engineering. So what I want you to do there is be able to associate various lines of thinking in ethics and engineering with particular schools and particular thinkers. Oh, Plato said something about this, about integrity, or Aristotle said something like that. 2. Interpret and explain core ethical engineering questions and concepts in terms that illustrate a comprehensive understanding thereof. There are problems in engineering ethics, not necessarily with the discipline itself, but with how do we deal with this situation in engineering? What's the right thing to do here? So I want you to be able to talk about those problems in an intelligent way. 3. Apply core ethical engineering questions and concepts to contemporary issues and personal experience. So sometimes we'll be doing some readings from things from a long time ago, and the question becomes, how is this relevant to now? That's one of your tasks, is to see how the things that we're going to study in here relate to the very present now. 4. Compare and contrast related core ethical questions and concepts and the correlates of thinkers and schools with which they are commonly associated. Be able to apply metaethical constructs unto particular engineering case studies and examples. So in the beginning of this course, we're going to look at various metaethical theories. And what I want you to be able to do is to take those theories and be able to apply them to contemporary case studies. What would a utilitarian say about this? What would a deontologist say about that? What would an Aristotelian say here? And so on. 5. Justify a sound philosophical position on a topic or topics of the ethical dimensions of engineering which demonstrates a synthesis in thought. What I want you to do here is, if you've got a position, I simply want you to be able to back it up with reasons and evidence. Required text for the course. We'll be looking at Martin and Schinzinger's Introduction to Engineering Ethics, 2nd edition. We'll also be using Wade Robinson's Ethics Within Engineering and Introduction. I'll be leaning a bit more heavily on the former than the latter. The former is more of a traditional textbook. The second one has some chapters that correspond to some things in the Martin and Schinzinger book that I'll be referencing too. And also, especially when we get into the second half of the semester, there will be some additional assignments, some PDFs that I'll be putting up on Blackboard too. Outline of topics. So this is the plan for the semester in terms of what we're going to cover. So here what I want to do is I want to talk about the basic outline, and this is subject to some ad hoc revision, and also to explain what you should be doing throughout the semester. So the basic outline is this. First thing we're going to do is prolegomena. That's introductory material. Let's define our terms. Let's talk a little bit about ethics itself, a little bit about engineering. Then we'll get into metaethics. These are the big theories of how we determine right and wrong. Then we'll look at achievements of engineering from the last few centuries and the ethical implications of those developments. Then we'll move on to codes of conduct in the engineering world. We'll talk about the ethics of safety. This has come up a lot, not just in the workplace for engineers, but even in our global behavior when it comes to, say, COVID-19 response. We'll talk about workplace responsibility, worker rights. We'll also talk about notions of truth, truthfulness, and truthiness. Some digital problems. There's new ethical quandaries as a result of things going on with the digital world today, where legislation certainly, and perhaps even ethics, is trying to catch up. We'll talk about environmental ethics and global justice. So let me get into what your weekly assignment should be. Now, these are not the aspects that are graded. I'll talk about that a little bit later in this video. But what will be happening each week is this. I'll be uploading videos that you'll need to watch, and also I'll give corresponding passages in the texts as well. Now let's get into assignments for the class. So for this class, there are 5 assignments, 2 exams, 3 weekly analyses. So here's the way the exams work. There's 1 midterm, 1 final, and I've got the dates for them in here. Now, we won't be having an in-class exam. I'm going to have all the exams be online entirely. Reasons for that, I think it's logistically easier. It doesn't waste class time. Midterm, for example, is going to be due the 8th of March. It'll be a combination of, we'll say, about 70 to 80% multiple choice, fill-in-the-blank questions, objective content, and about 20 to 30% essay stuff. The essays you'll have a week before. So the 8th, you'll have the essays by the 1st. You'll probably have them earlier than that. And you'll choose 2 essays. I'll probably have a list of somewhere between 5 and 8 essay questions. You will select 2. It will not be the surprise list of questions that some professors do. I know some professors are like, oh, prepare for these 8 questions. You'll have 2 of them. Which 2 will be on the exam? Show up to find out. I'm going to give you a list of questions that you can choose from. And so you will select 2 questions and you will write on them to the best of your ability online at home. So you'll have the time to prepare for them as well. So there won't be surprise or gotcha questions. And the objective content for the course, I don't believe in gotcha questions. If it's a question on the exam, it's something that I explicitly stated in class. It's not something where you have to, get some kind of decoder ring and figure it out. I will only question the most important content that I go over. The final exam will work the exact same way at the end of the semester. It will be due, as you can see, May 3rd, 2021. Exact same format. The final exam is not cumulative per se. Of course, it references stuff that we talked about earlier, but it will only focus on the stuff that we talked about in the latter half of the semester. So midterm, final, due the 8th of March and the 3rd of May, respectively, both online. And when I say they're due that day, they're due by the end of day. So by 11:59 p.m. that night, that's when they're due online. And they'll both go live probably a week before. So you have a week to work on it kind of in your own time at home. Then you've also got these weekly analyses. So let me explain these 2. You've got 3 2-page papers to do all semester long. These are called weekly analyses. Now, whereas the exams are each worth 35% a pop, so they're pretty significant in terms of their weight, these weekly analyses are each worth 10%. So if you don't do them, the highest grade you can make is a C. So make sure you get these in. And the length of them is pretty short. And that's because I know this from experience. It can be very challenging to write a philosophy paper. So all that I want you to do for this introductory class is this. 3 of these, 3 times throughout the semester, you're going to submit what I call a weekly analysis report. And so what you do here is you take, it says roughly a week's worth of class, but it doesn't need to be a week. You don't need to pick a week. I think that's a good framework. But what you can do is you can take a topic and in 2 pages, just write about it in your own words. Like, here's what we talked about in class. Here's my take on it. Here's what I think. Here's what we did, and here's what I think about it. Now, whatever you're going to say, back up what you're saying. Don't just say, I think this is stupid. If you do, back up, why do you think so? Or I think this is brilliant. I was really fascinated by this. Well, tell me more. Tell me why. But the thing I want you to focus on here is putting it in your own words. This is not a research paper. No outside sources are required whatsoever. Here, what I want you to work on is articulating your analysis and explication in your own words of what you encounter. So I'm really looking for what you have to say. Now, if you use outside sources for some reason, they do need to be cited appropriately per the Chicago Manual Style. I'll have a style guide that I'll be putting up on Blackboard as well. But what I really want to see is, what do you think about this? So don't do what I occasionally have students do. Don't go scooping stuff from Wikipedia or the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy or Britannica Online, just looking for facts to stuff your paper with. That's really not what I'm interested in. What I'm really interested in is, what do you think about this? Something that we talked about, what do you think about it? If it interested you, if it made you angry, if it made you think something new, whatever it is, just tell me about it 3 times throughout the semester. And these papers are due in a systematic way. So the first one's due at the end of January. The second one's due at the end of February. The third one's due at the end of March. How long? 2-page papers. 12-point, Times New Roman, double-spaced, 1-inch margins. And there will be an exemplar on Blackboard as well. So you should know exactly what this needs to look like. And I'll have a separate video about that too. So you can watch that video and figure out like what should this look like? What kind of stuff should I be doing? And I'll also have on Blackboard some examples of weekly analyses that I've had from students from past years to give you a sense of here's what you should do, here's what you shouldn't do, this is okay, that kind of thing. So you should have some familiarity with what I'm looking for in a weekly analysis. And you'll turn these in also online. These will not be turned in person or on paper. You'll submit them in their appropriate Dropbox in Blackboard, and they'll be under the Assignments tab. Next, grading policy. Nothing particularly remarkable here. Now, let me say this. At the end of the semester, when I'm calculating your final grades, if you have any decimal point of any kind, I round it up to the nearest whole number. So in other words, if you have like I know on here it says 59.9 is an F. If for some reason you have a 59.00001, you made a D. Okay? In the final analysis, you did it. Congratulations. But on these other ones, like if you have an 89.000000001, I'm rounding it up to a 90. You made an A. So that's not on particular assignments. What that is that's going to be the final grade at the end. So if you're on a decimal point, I'm going to round it up to the nearest whole number. Now that means, though, if you have a 58.0000001, sorry, you failed the class. But if you, whatever number that you've got at the end, if it's got a decimal of any kind, I'm rounding it up. All right, now let's get into a few policy things. So students with disabilities, if you have a physical, psychological, or learning disability which might affect your performance in this class, please contact the Office of Disability Services as soon as possible. And if you do have some disability for which you need to communicate that to me, please do so with the appropriate documentation, and we'll determine the appropriate accommodations for this hybrid version of the class, where most of the assignments are online. But if there are accommodations that need to be made, I will make them. Makeup assignments. So the exams are, you'll have a week to work on them at home. They're due the 8th of March and the 5th of May, respectively. But if for some reason something happens, you're working on your exam, your internet goes out, reach out to me as best as you can. You got my office phone number. Leave me a message. Hey, I was working on my exam and everything just tapped out for some reason. I don't know what happened. Let me know. Okay, I will work with you on that. Otherwise, things are due when they're due. Exams should be turned in on time. If there are extenuating circumstances, let me know. As for the weekly analyses, I'll accept them late, but I'll take 10 points off per day. So you know when they're all due as well. So the first weekly analysis is due the 31st of January. You turn it in the 1st of February, you got a 90. You can still make an A on it. You turn it in Groundhog Day, 2nd day of February, the highest you can make is an 80. So, I mean, hypothetically, you could turn it in, I guess, February 5th and make a 50. Don't do that. Turn it in on time. But I will accept them late. But I will be deducting a 10-point penalty per day on the weekly analyses. Junior writing portfolio. Remember that the work that you produce for this class, these weekly analyses, can be used in your Rising Junior portfolio. For more information about that, you can go to the AZ Index on the USC Aiken homepage, or you can talk to Dr. Matthew Miller, the Writing Assessment Director. Late policy. Once established, exams and papers are due on the scheduled day specified, with a late penalty of 10 points for every day of which the assignment is late for weekly analyses. So I do accept weekly analyses 10 points late a day. You already have the due dates for those. It's the final days of January, February, and March, respectively. You also have the due dates for the exam, which are March 8th and May 3rd, respectively. Nevertheless, missing a deadline can be a stressful experience, whether it be due to a one-off timing issue, or it could be the result of something more persistent, struggling with the course material, life circumstances, mental state, and the source of that trouble is not always obvious from the inside. So students in these situations often blame themselves, and the stress can simply continue to grow from here. If you find yourself in this situation, I can help. So if you're going to miss a deadline, 1, submit whatever you have before the deadline. And in so doing, I'll have that first day's late penalty. So it's just a -5. But from there, what I want you to do is to maintain communication with me until you're finished. And we'll come up with a plan to complete the assignment. Now let's get into academic honesty. The pressure to earn high grades and belief that a good end can justify any means whatsoever leads many students to resort to less than honest methods to acquire a desirable grade. The student is to avoid condescending into this particular quandary. The USCA Student Handbook lists cheating, lying, bribery, and plagiarism as academic dishonesty. Examples include, so I want to go into this one because I have this sometimes happen from semester to semester. Sometimes I think it's unintentional, but I want to make sure it's clear here. What constitutes academic dishonesty? 1. Giving or receiving unauthorized assistance or attempting to give or receive such assistance in connection with the performance of any academic work. Okay, you get unauthorized aid. So I say open book, but you go, you know what? This person did a quiz a couple of years ago. Let's see how similar it could be. Not a good idea. And I can recognize that, I think, more easily than some people give me credit for. 2, unauthorized use of materials or information of any type or the unauthorized use of electronic or mechanical device in connection with the completion of any academic work. Probably not going to be an issue in here. 3, unauthorized use of any portable electronic device unless required for the course during a test period without consent of the instructor. Our exams are going to be online, so this is not going to be a problem. 4, access to the contents of any test or examination or the purchase, sale, or theft of any test or examination prior to its administration. Somehow somebody hacks in and gets my copy of the final exam and you're using it, that's a problem. 5, use of another person's work without proper acknowledgement of source, that is plagiarism. So sometimes plagiarism occurs because someone quotes something without designating that it's a quotation. Sometimes it's because somebody alludes to something without designating that it's an allusion. It's allusion with an A. And sometimes somebody paraphrases something without indicating that it's a paraphrase of something. So if you're going to paraphrase, allude, or quote, make sure you throw a citation in there just to be safe. And so a lot of times people mess this one up just by not being on the safe side. If you're using something that didn't come from your brain, tell me where you got it. There's no harm in that whatsoever. Just go ahead, better safe than sorry when it comes to that. 6, intentional misleading of any person in connection with any academic work, including the scheduling, completion, performance, or submission of any such work. So you're like, I'm going to do my final exam, but actually it's going to be my cousin that does it for me because they have a degree in philosophy. That would be an instance of academic dishonesty. 7, offering or giving any favor or thing of value for the purpose of influencing improperly a grade or other evaluation of a student in an academic program. So you're failing, but you go, you know what? I've got a lovely timeshare in Orlando that you can use next year. That would be an instance of academic dishonesty. So don't try and bribe me. 8, conduct intended to interfere with an instructor's ability to evaluate accurately a student's competency or performance in an academic program. Work submitted for this course that is determined to be the result of either cheating, plagiarism, or collusion will earn a 0 for that assignment and may cause the student to receive an F. If work is seen to be dishonest with any of the above criteria, it will be marked as 0 and could make you liable for getting a failing grade. So don't do it. All right, COVID contingencies. Since this is an online class, we don't have the same kind of COVID contingencies as an in-person class. For example, if you're at home by yourself, you do not need to wear a mask when you sit down to watch the lectures for this class or do your work for this class. 1, COVID-related course changes. This year, just like last year, it's expected that COVID-19 could pose additional challenges for students and faculty and may lead to changes in the semester schedule. As this is an online course, quarantined students are expected to continue with the course as planned. However, if you become too ill to complete your work, at their discretion, the professor may arrange for necessary accommodations, which may, depending on the circumstances and documentation, include modifications to due dates, alternative assignments, an incomplete, a medical withdrawal, etc. Should the professor become ill, their engagements in the course may be reduced or delayed, and/or another professor may take over the course, potentially resulting in syllabus modifications. Computer and communication requirements. Now, being that this is an online course, this one should be a given. But here are the requirements. Each student must have regular access to a computer with a video camera and a microphone. These may be required daily or only on occasion depending on the mode of instruction or the health status of the student or faculty. All students must be able to access and use Blackboard. Each student must have internet access to receive notifications about the class and to complete assignments if required by the instructor. So since this is an asynchronous class, the stuff with the webcam and the microphone is not as necessary, but in case we do need to correspond in a Zoom meeting in my office hours, then it will become necessary. Finally, students must check their university email and Blackboard announcements each day. 3. Mode of instruction. The University of South Carolina-Aiken reserves the right to change, adjust, and/or cancel any campus operation, including but not limited to mode of instruction, delivery of services, or use of campus facilities, whenever the campus administration determines in its sole discretion that circumstances warrant the operational change. All right, that concludes this video about the introduction to this course. If you have any questions, don't forget you can email me at thomasb@usca.edu, and I'll have some additional content coming out on Blackboard soon. Have a great spring 2021.